Hi everyone and welcome to another TBR video, this one for week 2 of Horror Mayhem. So the theme for week 2 is Gothic. Now, I have found as my reading has evolved, I really like things that are tagged as Gothic. That's a huge selling point for me and is a major, I think trigger word is the right use, but in a good way. It really makes me intrigued and wanting to read that book much more. So things with Gothic are, you know, like I'm being redundant, but are very intriguing to me. So I have a bunch of possibilities. Now I'm doing this a little different from the last one. The last one I just kind of went down a list. This time I'm going from the bottom of my list all the way up to the top, because the top of this list is the book that I am going to prioritize and say I am committed to reading this book during this week of Horror Mayhem. So let's go ahead and get into it, because these videos can be a little long. So the first book I'm going to talk about, I will insert some images of the books that I do not physically own. I'm surprised I own more than I thought I did, and I have a lot more that are Gothic on my shelves that are tagged as Gothic, but they're not specifically horror. Like there's classic Gothic and mystery Gothic, but they're not. There's no horror association or anything like that. And I'm looking specifically for horror Gothic, the tag horror. So okay, so the first one I'm going to mention is called We Have Always Lived in the Castle. My favorite thing about this cover is the black cat that is front and center that is being held. Anyway, this was written by Shirley Jackson. Now this is, it's tagged as a horror classic Gothic. So there is that. Okay. The synopsis is, my name is Mary Catherine Blackwood. I am 18 years old and I live with my sister Constance. I have often thought that with any luck at all, I could have been born a werewolf, because the two middle figures on both fingers, excuse me, not figures, because the two middle fingers on both my hands are the same length. But I have had to be content with what I had. I dislike washing myself and dogs and noise. I like my sister Constance and Richard Plantagenet and, oh my heck, Amanita Philodius. I don't know. Let's see. The death cap mushroom. So I guess Amanita Philodius is the death cap mushroom. I don't know. Everyone else in my family is dead. So that's what that says. As far as age range, it does say that this is adult as well. So yeah, I don't know. I think that sounds good. I have that marked. All of these I want to read at some point. Some of them I just don't own a copy of yet, whether it's physical or ebook. Okay, let's go on to the other one. Now this next one I did not know was actually tagged as horror. I knew there was a romantic element in this. There is a play adaptation. I think there's also a movie adaptation. And I knew it was a book, but I didn't know if the play or the book came first. I'm pretty sure the book came first, but it is a classic, and that is The Phantom of the Opera. And I've always been interested in reading this. I've never seen the play, but I have heard bits and pieces of the musical, as far as like, I don't know, just ones without the words, the instrumental. And I've loved that music. It sounds beautiful. And the bits that I've seen on like, where people will film a certain point of the play and put it on YouTube, that I've seen, and I've liked what I've seen. So I would like to go and see the play adaptation. But The Phantom of the Opera, and this is by Gaston Leroux. I'm sure I said that wrong. And it is actually translated by Alexander, I'm going to say it wrong, Alexander Teixeira de Matos. So I know I said that wrong. Okay. So most of the time at Halloween I get asked if I was named after the Stephen King book, Christine. I have had like 2 people in my life that I can recall that have asked if I was named after the main character of Phantom of the Opera. So I do know there is a character named Christine in Phantom of the Opera. It says it was first published in French as a serial in 1909. The Phantom of the Opera is a riveting story that revolves around the young Swedish Christine Day, I'm guessing is how the name is said. Her father, a famous musician, dies, and she is raised in the Paris Opera House with his dying promise of a protective angel of music to guide her. After a time at the Opera House, she begins hearing a voice, who eventually teaches her how to sing beautifully. All goes well until Christine's childhood friend Raoul comes to visit his parents, who are patrons of the opera, and sees Christine when she begins successfully singing on stage. The voice, who is the deformed murderous ghost of the opera house named Eric, however, goes violent in his terrible jealousy until Christine suddenly disappears. The Phantom is in love, but it can only spell disaster. So, I knew there was a romantic element of it, and I kind of have known the gist of it, but I don't know. That synopsis, I do want to read it even more, but yeah. So at some point, I really do want to get a hold of a copy of this book and read it. But that's The Phantom of the Opera. Okay. Okay, now this is one I have actually already read. So let me go ahead and kind of go over the synopsis. So this is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. So let's see, it says Irving explores the uneasy relationship of an American writer to English literary traditions. Oh, well, this is like, this particular synopsis I'm looking at is a combination of Sleepy Hollow and other short stories. But I think it's like Ichabod that goes to the land of Sleepy Hollow and they're haunted by the Headless Horseman. That's pretty much it. But it is classified as a Gothic horror. Now, I will say this, I have read the book. I have also seen the movie adaptation where Johnny Depp plays, I know I'm getting but I think he's Ichabod in the movie. Ichabod Crane or something like that. But he plays the visitor, the medical examiner or something like that. I will say in this particular case, I actually liked the movie much more than the book. It is a short story, but I felt like the movie was a good adaptation, and I just felt like it was more well-rounded than the book was, so I did like the movie more than the book in this particular case. But yeah, so I know some people say blasphemy, but you know what? It is what it is. Oh, okay, so this one is called The Silent Companions, and it's by Laura Purcell. It looks like this is a standalone. It does say this is a historical fiction, but it is a horror historical fiction, and it is also classified as Gothic. There might be some fantastical elements in this as well. So it says, when newly widowed Elise is sent to see out her pregnancy at her late husband's crumbling country estate, The Bridge, what greets her is far from the life of wealth and privilege she was expecting. When Elise married handsome young heir Rupert Bainbridge, she believed she was destined for a life of luxury, but with her husband dead just weeks after their marriage, her new servants resentful and the local villagers actively hostile, Elise has only her husband's awkward cousin for company. Or so she thinks. Inside her new home lies a locked door beyond which is a painted wooden figure, a silent companion, that bears a striking resemblance to Elise herself. The residents of the bridge are terrified of the figure, but Elise tries to shrug this off as simple superstition, that is, until she notices the figure's eyes following her. There you go. That's, okay, I'm more intrigued than I was before. Now this one, I believe I had a copy of, and for whatever reason, I don't anymore. I can't find it. I swear I had a copy of this. I must have, for whatever reason, unhauled it at some point. Now I'm like very much regretting it. Yeah, I don't marked it, but I know I had it at some point. But that is, and this is actually part of a series, and the book I'm talking about is Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews, and there's 10 primary works in the series, and it's the Dollinger series. Anyway, Flowers in the Attic is the first book in this series, and it says, such wonderful children. Such a beautiful mother, such a lovely house, such endless terror. It wasn't that she didn't love her children. She did. But there was a fortune at stake, a fortune that would assure their later happiness if she could keep the children a secret from her dying father. So she and her mother hid her darlings away in an unused attic, just for a little while. But the brutal days swelled into agonizing years. Now Kathy, Chris, and the twins wait in their cramped and helpless world, stirred by adult dreams, adult desires, served a meager sustenance by an angry, superstitious grandmother who knows that the devil works in dark and devious ways. Sometimes he sends children to do his work, children who, one by one, must be destroyed. Way upstairs there are 4 secrets hidden, blonde, beautiful, innocent, struggling to stay alive. I know I had a copy of that, but obviously I don't anymore. I've unhauled that. Okay. The next book, I have heard so many references of this book growing up and of this story. I know there are adaptations on TV and stuff like that, and I know I've seen an adaptation, so I have a brief basic understanding of this, but I still want to read the actual work, and that is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. And for some reason I've pulled up a Spanish copy. Let me and I can't read that to you. Got an English translation. I did take Spanish in junior high, but I only know a few words, so I could try and read the Spanish translation, but I know I would slaughter many of the words. Okay, so Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is by Robert Louis Stevenson. I think it's Louis. Robert Louis Stevenson. Okay. Robert Louis Stevenson's masterpiece. Let's see. Okay. Sprang from the darkest recesses of his own unconscious during a nighttime form which his wife awakened him, alerted by his screams. More than 100 years later, this tale of mild-mannered Dr. Jekyll and the drug that unleashes his evil inner persona, the loathsome twisted Mr. Hyde, has lost none of its ability to shock. Okay, so we basically know that Dr. Jekyll turns into Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll is good and Mr. Hyde is bad. I have always wanted to read that, so at some point that will definitely be a priority. I really, really want to read that. So yeah. Okay, now we're on to the physical books. I think there's some of them I don't have a synopsis for on the book, but also I'll have to look that up on Goodreads. But let's go with the physical books. So this one I'm going to talk about is The Orphan of Cemetery Hill, and this is by Hester Fox. So this one says, "The dead won't bother you if you don't give them permission." Boston, 1844. Tabby has a peculiar gift. She can communicate with the recently departed. It makes her special, but it also makes her dangerous. As an orphaned child, she fled with her sister, Alice, from their charlatan Aunt Belafonte, who wanted only to exploit Tabby's gift so she could profit from the recent craze for seances. Now a young woman and tragically separated from Alice, Tabby works with her adopted father, Eli, the kind caretaker of a large Boston cemetery. When a series of macabre grave robberies begins to plague the city, Tabby is ensnared in a deadly plot by the perpetrators. Oh goodness, by the perpetrators known only as the Resurrection Men. In the end, Tabby's gift will either save both her and the cemetery or bring about her own destruction. So there's another option for you, The Orphan of Cemetery Hill. And I absolutely love the cover on this one. It's definitely has that Gothic vibe to it, and is definitely what can really draw me in to pick up a book. Without even reading the synopsis, I know it's like, oh, that's going to be one I like. Okay, this next one is an auto by author for me at this point. I have this one and like one, maybe two others. I think only one more of hers I have to read. But this particular one is The Keepers of Metsan Valo by Wendy Webb. I really like Wendy Webb. She does a really good job of writing atmospheric Gothic books. So I do recommend Wendy Webb. My favorite being The End of Temperance Dare, so that could be an option. It definitely is Gothic and it has paranormal aspects in that particular one. But we're talking about this one. This one says, is there more Let's see. Is there more to her family's strange folk tales than just legend? Believe in the unbelievable. In Metsan, Valo, her family home on Lake Superior, Annie Holla's beloved grandmother has died. Among her fond memories, what Annie remembers most vividly is her grandmother's eerie yet enchanting storytelling. By firelight, she spun tall tales of spirits in the nearby forests and waters who could heal or harm on a whim. But of course, those are only stories. The reading of the will now occasions a family reunion. Annie and her twin brother, their almost otherworldly mother, and relatives Annie hasn't seen in forever, some with good reason. All are brought back together under the one roof that strains to hold all their tension. But it's not just Annie's family who is unsettled. Whispers wind through the woods. Laughter bursts from bubbling streams. Raps from unseen hands rupture on the walls. Fireflies swarm and nightmares stir. With each odd occurrence, Annie fears that her return has invited less a welcoming and more a warning. So, yeah, this is definitely a priority on my TBR, but it is not one I'm going to read for this week. So, all right. Next, we are moving on to No One's Home, and this is by D.M. Pulley. I used to subscribe to Once Upon a Book Club, so I got this from there. I've liked all the selections that they have done. Eventually, I'll want to resubscribe to them. This was a selection in 2019, and I just haven't gotten around to this one yet. But No One's Home by D.M. Pulley. It says secrets, lies, someone dies. Margot and Myron Spielman move to a new town looking for a fresh start and an escape from the long shadow of their past. But soon after they buy Rawlingswood, a foreclosed mansion rumored to be haunted, they realize they're in for more of the same, or worse. After renovation fraught with injuries and setbacks, the Spielmans move into the century-old house, and their problems quickly escalate. The home's beautiful facade begins to crumble around them when their teenage son uncovers disturbing details of Rawlingwood's history, a history of murder, betrayal, and financial ruin. The Spielmans' own shameful secrets and lies become harder to hide as someone or something inside the house watches their every move. So, there's that one. Yeah, I'm even more intrigued than I was before, but yes, so there's that. Okay. This one has been making its way around BookTube for a while, so this will probably be no shock to many of you, but I just have not read it yet. But that is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. And for those of you who may not have heard about this before, it says, after receiving a frantic letter from her newlywed cousin, Naomi Taboada, Naomi heads to High Place, a distant house in the Mexican countryside, unsure what she will find. Naomi is an unlikely rescuer. She's a glamorous debutante, more suited to cocktail parties than amateur sleuthing. But she's also tough, smart, and not afraid. Not of her cousin's new English husband, a stranger who is both menacing and alluring. Not of his father, the ancient patriarch who seems fascinated by Naomi. And not even the house itself, which begins to invade Naomi's dreams with visions of blood and doom. So, I think that sounds good. I've heard that it's like, so she gets a letter from her cousin that she's in trouble, and then she goes and she tries to help her cousin, but when she gets there, she's like, oh no, everything's fine, I don't know what you're talking about. That's the synopsis that I've heard, but I like the synopsis that's actually here better, but that's just me. So anyway, yeah, so this definitely is an option. It is a horror, and it is Gothic. So Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. The next option I'll talk about is The Sundown Motel, and this is by Simone St. James. I have several books by Simone St. James. They all sound really good. I just haven't read any of them yet, so I definitely need to. So this one says, Upstate New York, 1982. Viv Delaney wants to move to New York City, and to help pay for it, she takes a job as the night clerk at the Sundown Motel in Fell, New York. But something isn't right at the motel, something haunting and scary. So this one has a dual timeline because now it is Upstate New York, 2017. And it says, Carly Kirk has never been able to let go of the story of her Aunt Viv, who mysteriously disappeared from the Sundown before she was born. Carly decides to move to Fell and visit the motel, where she quickly learns that nothing has changed since 1982, and soon she finds herself ensnared in the same mysteries that claimed her aunt. So, the Sundown Motel. There we go. Okay, this one, I just got this, was it a month ago, last month, or the month before? I don't remember, but I fairly recently got it. I've heard more people talking about this, and so my intrigue and my interest has increased with this. But that is The Turn of the Screw, and this is by Henry James, and it is a short story. This is just over 100 pages. It is 124 pages, at least this particular edition. So, for those of you who don't know, and I wanted it because I've heard it's creepy, and I really liked the cover of some of these, and so it was just kind of a blind buy, I guess. But it says, by the comforts of a blazing fireplace on a cold Christmas Eve night, guests at a holiday party share stories of phantoms and ghosts of Christmas past. Yet one guest delivers a tale of sheer fright for which no one listening was prepared. As the story goes, after losing both parents, a young boy and girl move into a large wooded estate to be held under the care of their uncle. Wanting nothing to do with raising the children, the uncle hires a young governess to attend to their care. Yet the governess never could have anticipated the horrors that await her discovery. When it becomes evident that the children have some supernatural connection with a deceased former governess and her lover, the young governess finds herself scrambling to regain control of the two children slipping away from her grasp. So, this is definitely an option if you want a shorter read. I may try and squeeze this in, but this is definitely an option that I am very intrigued for. Okay, so this next one, I don't know if there is a synopsis at the start of this book. No, it has chronology and then an introduction. Oh wait, let's see. Okay, so I always thought that The Creature was the name of this title, but then I've actually figured once I've seen a couple of the movies that it's the creator of The Creature that's this name. And I don't know if The Creature even has a name, but that's Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. And I didn't know when I was looking at this, Mary Shelley's middle name is Wollstonecraft. So, and this was originally published in 1818. Okay, so I'm going to try and read a little bit of the synopsis while holding this book up. So this is the Penguin Clothbound edition. It's got a pretty large introduction and notes on the text. So like this whole bit is like chronology, notes, science behind it, and things like that. And then it says author's introduction, and the story actually starts. So I've got all this, so all that, and then the story starts there. But does it go all the way to the end of this? Oh, there's a bunch of blank pages there, and references and more notes. So basically, I've got a bunch at the front, quite a bit at the end, and just this chunk here. So the actual story is less than 265 pages in this edition, because the story actually starts on page 15. So about 250 pages. So quick, fairly short read. But where it's a classic, it's probably not going to be as quick as I would like. But it says, let's see, this edition. Hard-hitting and politically charged aspects of Shelley's original writing. Okay. So it's not giving me synopsis on Goodreads. So basically, my understanding is that the creator is Frankenstein, creates this monster people don't understand, and something with fire, and being afraid of fire, I guess, for the creature. He's supposed to get a brain, and he ends up with an abnormal brain. And I'm sure many of you have already seen the one where he goes by Frankenstein, and the guy gets the abnormal brain. I love that movie. But yeah, so I do want to read the actual text so I can understand it some more. So at some point I will get to that. Okay, and this, when I was thinking about books to read for this week, this was the first thought that I had, but where I don't know exactly how the rest of this month is going to go and May is going to go. I thought I'm going to have to wait until I know I have more capacity to read a classic. Yeah, and this one is over 600 pages, it looks like. But, and when I do read it, my mom will be very happy. She loves this book. But that's going to be The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. I absolutely love this edition. It's another Penguin Gothic edition. I love all the blue birds. So let's see if I can read the synopsis on this one. It says, in one moment, every drop of blood in my body was brought to a stop. There, as if it had that moment sprung out of the earth, stood the figure of a solitary woman, dressed from head to foot in white. The Woman in White famously opens with, Walter Hartwright's eerie encounter on a moonlit London road. Engaged as a drawing master to the beautiful Laura Fairley. Walter becomes embroiled in the sinister intrigues of Sir Percival Glyde as his charming friend Count Fosco, who has a taste for white mice, vanilla bonbons, and poison. Pursuing questions of identity and insanity along with the paths and corridors of English country houses and the madhouse, The Woman in White is the first and most influential of the Victorian genre that combined Gothic horror with psychological realism. So that's cool. And I have heard that before, but just kind of in passing. So, but yeah, so The Woman in White, at some point I will, but I just need to have more capacity, brain capacity, to be able to understand and read a big classic like that. Okay. And finally, the last book I'm going to talk about is the one I am going to focus on. Or make priority and read for week 2 of Horror Mayhem. And that is going to be The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling. Oh, I didn't realize that those... Okay, so these little threads here, I never looked close enough at the cover, but those are actually stitches going into the skin. And you can see some spots. I don't know if you'll be able to tell here where it's like you can see the skin being pulled. Anyway, so there's that. It's just kind of a brown under the cover. It says, let's see, practical and assuming Jane Shoringfield has done the calculations and decided that the most secure path forward is this: a husband in a marriage of convenience who will allow her to remain independent and occupied with meaningful work. Her first choice, the dashing but reclusive Dr. Augustine Lawrence, agrees to her proposal with only one condition: that she must never visit Lindridge Hall, his crumbling family manor outside of town. Yet, on their wedding night, an accident strands her at his door in a pitch-black rainstorm, and she finds him changed. Gone is the bold, courageous surgeon, and in his place is a terrified, paranoid man, one who cannot tell reality from nightmare and fears Jane is an apparition, come to haunt him. By morning, Augustine is himself again. But Jane knows something is deeply wrong at Lindridge Hall, and with the man she has so hastily bound her safety to. Kind of gives me a little bit with the guy being one way during the day and at night, Dr. Jekyll Mr Hyde, so I wonder if it's kind of like a retelling of that. But yeah, so this is the book that I'm going to commit to and read for week 2 of Horror Mayhem. So let me know what you are planning to read for week 2 for Horror Mayhem. That is a horror gothic, and what you want to read if you are following along with the themes. So, but again, you don't have to. You can read whatever horror you want. But this is what I'm going to read. So I'm excited. Definitely talk to me in the comments below. And until next time, stay true to yourself and enjoy a good book. And I'll talk to you later.